HCA Government Affairs Committee. I'm also the president of the Hawaii Coffee Growers Association, and I'm going to give you a brief summary of the government affairs report and also some of the proposed grading standard changes that we're going to be working on. Did anybody hear me okay in the back? Okay. So my topics today again are going to be Hawaii legislative measures and the proposals to green coffee grading standards for state-grown Hawaiian green coffee. This year in the state legislature, the Hawaii Coffee Association worked really hard with lawmakers to put a bunch of bills out that are going to be favorable for our industry. So I'll start with the Senate bills. You know, it's very difficult to understand how the process works, so sometimes we'll propose a bill and it'll get changed or get pushed into another bill. So the ones in the Senate side, in a summary, did not make it through. SB, Senate Bill 2905, that was a coffee blending bill that started out to disclose regions and origins with the percent by weight. That one actually got changed over to a House bill. So that got deferred. When it says deferred, it didn't go through. 2906, that was a bill we thought would make it through to extending the offense on false labeling, which would include roasted coffee, and that would increase the fine to $10,000. That one also got deferred. Senate Bill 2907. This one requires the Hawaii Invasive Species Council to classify coffee leaf rust as an invasive species. There was not appropriations, it was no funding, but for some reason that one also didn't make it. It made it pretty far. It got all the way to conference, but it didn't make it through conference committee. So that died. 2908. This one was important to us because it was about expanding our state quarantine facilities, which we all know are very, very important in terms of the trying to get new varieties in the quarantine. That's hugely important to us. That one got deferred in Ways and Means. And likely 2909, which was very similar, this one was kind of a reach because what we're asking for was to allow a certification process through the HDOA for private quarantine facilities, meaning that a private entity could build their own greenhouse and they would take on the duties of certifying and getting coffee through the quarantine process. And that one didn't get heard after the second reading. Shifting over to the House bill, and there was basically the only bill that was the House Bill 1517. This one was very comprehensive. This was the 51% blend law, and it required the disclosure of non-Hawaiian coffees used in blending and the percent by weight in the blend. So, I mean, we've been trying to get this through in all kinds of different forms for many years. Biggest problem that we couldn't get anywhere with it was because our industry was not really unified on it. But, you know, we found that, you know, the fact that we couldn't support it as an industry, but with the recent counterfeiting and watering down of blends, we were losing our brand. So because of that, our entire industry really got together and moved forward on this. And we were able to get good testimony, we were able to get good support from all kinds of other agencies, and it actually made it to conference. And I gotta admit, I gotta say that this is the furthest this particular bill has ever made it. And it didn't pass with the key structural items that we wanted. We didn't get the blending percentages, but what did come out of it, there was some enacting the parts that, you know, there was going to be an economic study to be conducted by the HDOA, and it's now headed to the governor for signature, and we think we have some support in getting that as well. What I didn't mention also, there was language in there for CBB and coffee leaf rust pesticide subsidy. That was taken out, but it also got put in the actual budget as a line item. So that funding for the subsidy is still there. That's 15, 17. I'm going to jump right into what we've been talking about in terms of grading standards. This is not so much government, it will be a government issue. We were working really hard on our committee for the Grading Standards Committee back in 2017. If you remember, there was the Sunshine Law with the coffee that was jumped from 10% to 20%. Well, it actually sunsetted and came back. And so we've been talking about changing grading standards to make it a little bit friendlier for people with high percentages of CBB damage on their beans and this and that. So what I have here is stuff that we've been discussing ad nauseum to a point where we were able to take it to our board and get approval for recommendation. What we haven't done yet is we need to take these items that I'm about to talk about further and take them to the Department of Ag, and then we begin the negotiations of the reality of how that will change the process of grading Hawaii coffee. So the first one is the grade standards for washed coffees, which is very important here in Kona. We're taking out the roast quality, which would be eliminated. And the cupping of the lots by HDOA certifiers to take out the roast quality. Grades will all remain the same, from extra fancy down to 3X and Peaberry 1. We're going to talk about putting in process descriptions. So if you want on the label, you could say, for instance, if you had a honey processed coffee or something, we're going to allow that. The next one's a pretty hard one to understand, but this one's about the defect. So we bring it to one full defect for the sour, stinky, black, moldy coffees. Those are high scoring defect items. And where the other defects, which are more minor defects, which would be the CBB one with the pinhole damages, take that to 10-to-1 ratio, which would be that would equal one full defect. So I know that's very confusing, but it's a proposal that will actually help the growers in Kona and for wash coffee guys. And then we also bumped up the moisture range. Used to be 9 to 12%. We bumped it up to 12.5% from 12. Again, these are not final. This is just discussion phase, but we've taken it through to the board. This is addressing natural processed coffee for a lot of the guys that have, like myself, which are machine harvested. And the grading system now for naturals is very vague. It's very small. So we wanted to bump that up a little bit. And so we're going to allow a lot of the same grades. They allow the same grades as wash coffee. We're going to change the moisture percentage, go down to 8%, up to 13%, so that range is 5% instead of what was 3. Uniformity of color, which will be required for all grades higher than prime. And then again, all other standards, the descriptions, defect allowance, etc., will all be the same as washed. And then this one I thought was a pretty good one. We were going to ask the HDOA to formally recognize growing regions as a unique origin. So this particular slide here is mostly regarding all the coffees grown on the Big Island. So right now you have, Hawaii, or you have Kona. We're going to be able to extend it out to Ka'u, Puna, Hilo, which would include both North and South Hilo, Hamakua, Kohala, which includes North and South Kohala. So they would have their own stamp with their name on it. And then everybody on the other islands, Maui, Lanai, basically we're all the same already. We're already there with those representing those regions. Okay, so currently on the Hawaii Certificate of Quality, it basically says Hawaii Certificate of Quality and does not say origin. We want to swap that back. It used to have origin on there. We'd like to get that back in there. This is because right now, a buyer, say in Japan, wants to say, well, your coffee's not certified for origin. Some of us have to go to the Chamber of Commerce to get that, and that's not necessary. We should be able to get that back on there. It helps with our marketing. It also requests that H2A provide certifiers on each island and district uniformity of grading equipment. This is important. I have a shore moisture meter. The Department of Ag has a different machine, and they're actually a half to a whole % different. And so that's a real problem. We're requesting the H2A to look into the viability methods to allow third-party certifiers. This one hasn't gone very far, but we're going to keep asking for it. And this one also addresses the logistics. So if you're in Ka'u or if you're in Puna, you got to actually ask somebody to come from Hilo to do your certification. It's spendy, it's costly, and it's not very convenient. So we'd like to be able to at least discuss that part. And then the last one would be to allow for estate coffee to be shown on the label, which would, basically it's a coffee that's grown in one location and it's not a mixture of different farms. And that's my presentation on what we've been doing in government affairs. I'm going to run, but if there's any questions, I'll kick it over to Chris. He's on the committee as well. Tommy's also in our committee. But
just one question. On the grading standards, if we are looking at replacement of varieties in Hawaii as a result of CNR, having so many like fancy, extra fancy, then bean size becomes important.
well, bean size is definitely already in there. So I mean,
Why do we need to have so many subdivisions, like extra fancy, Hawaii #1, that puts a disadvantage in the choice of variety because we have to look at what the bean size is going to be.
yeah, you know what? That's a great question. And the thing about that that's really important is I grow the Maui Mocha, which does not get bigger than a Screen 14. And so I can't get it higher than a prime. So this is the kind of discussions that we want to continue talking about bean size, and because different varieties have different sizes, and I can't ever get an extra fancy. And so yeah, but again, we got some work to do. We're going to push forward, and again, we welcome any comments as we move forward with this stuff. You know, with COVID, we were ready to go to the DOA and start talking because eventually has to go to public hearing, and it takes forever to get these new rules changed. These are rule changes, not HDOA. Yeah. And so when but again, COVID happened, and it just threw us. We haven't done anything in grading standards since. So we're going to probably start kicking this into line and start working on it again. So thanks for your question. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimo. Yeah, it's important to underscore that these grade standards are solely our recommendations of industry to the DOA. The DOA is the actual arbiter. So this is a virtual wish list of revisions to the grade standards since it's sunsetted. We'll present these to the DOA. They'll undertake their administrative rules-making process, which will involve public hearings on numerous islands. So while this is a wish list, we expect that it'll get amended as it goes through the process. Any other questions on government affairs?